One of the best-known woodblock print artists in the late 18th century was Toshusai Sharaku. Although the dates of his birth and death are not known, he was active in the mid-1790s when he produced nearly 150 prints of famous kabuki actors. This print depicts the actor Otani Oniji III as the servant Odehei in a scene from the kabuki play The Colorful Reigns of a Beloved Wife, Yoshitsune of the Thousand Cherry Trees. The character represented is a samurai's servant who is employed to carry out unsavory deeds. He is shown with red-rimmed eyes and a kind of grimace on his face. His hands are jutting forward with fingers splayed as though he's about to strangle someone. The background, a flat gray made from mica, is typical of the prints that Sharaku made in 1794. This print is also by Sharaku. It depicts the actor Tomisaburo II as Ohide in the play Otokoyama o Edo no Ishusue, which was first performed in 1794. On the left, in the vertical panel, are the personal names and crests of the actor. In later versions of this print, the background is pale yellow rather than gray. In 1794, a law was passed against the use of luxury items, including mica. Sharaku began using yellow grounds instead, but the effect is generally thought to be less effective than that of the earlier gray mica. Another major woodblock print artist who was active in the late 18th century was Kitagawa Utamaru. Although he produced prints on the theme of the Revenge of the 47 Ronin and illustrations for books about insects, he is best known for his images of women. Some of these are the Bijin type, but others are genre scenes of ordinary wives and mothers. Not much is known about the early life of Utamaru, apart from the fact that he was a student of the Kano school artist Toriyama Sekien. By the 1790s, however, Utamaru had received recognition as one of the foremost ukiyo-e artists. Utagawa made a number of prints in series. This image is titled Coquettish Type, and it belongs to the series 10 Physiognomic Types of Women. This image by Utamaru is a subtle example of the shunga genre of erotic image. It depicts a couple in a room above a restaurant and is part of an album titled Poem of the Pillow. On the open fan is inscribed a suggestive poem by the comic poet Yadoya no Meshimuro. The poem is, "Its beak caught firmly in the clamshell, the snipe cannot fly away of an autumn evening." Stylistically, the print is innovative in the relatively large size of the figures, which are depicted close to the picture plane, and in the use of brown rather than black for the outlines of the bodies. This work by Utamaru, done about 1790, is called The Hours of the Rat, Mother and Sleepy Child. It's part of the series Women's Daily Customs. The Hours of the Rat refers to midnight, and the woman is depicted getting out of bed to take care of a small child who rubs his eyes sleepily. In 1804, Utamaru made the mistake of issuing a print depicting Hideyoshi and a group of concubines in a landscape with cherry blossoms, and was arrested for violating the prohibition against identifying famous historical figures. He received the sentence of 3 days in jail and 50 days in hand shackles. His health suffered from this punishment, and it's considered to have been a factor in his death 2 years later. In the 19th century, the most important school of ukiyo-e was the Utagawa, founded in the late 18th century by Utagawa Toyoharu. He painted this image of a pleasure outing at Mukojima to view cherry blossoms, sometime between 1788 and 1801. He's known for his use of Western one-point linear perspective. Utagawa Toyoharu is generally considered to have been more significant as a teacher than as an artist. His many students were mostly talented printmakers, and through their work and that of their own students, the Utagawa school built its reputation. Utagawa Toyokuni worked in a style different from that of Utagawa Toyoharu, but he was associated with the Utagawa school. In the late 18th century, he produced his series Pictures of Actors on Stage, which consisted of full-length images of actors that, like the Prince of Sharaku, had light gray backgrounds, but without the mica. This scroll painting by Toyokuni dates to 1798 to 1799, and it's one of a number of images that he produced of beautiful women. It's titled Woman Wiping Her Lipstick. This print by Toyokuni was made in 1800. It depicts the actors Omuraya Denbei and Iwai Kumesaburo in a play called Courtesan, The Folding Screen and the Sea. The scene is of the double suicide of Oshun and Denbei, which took place in 1703. Double suicides were popular in plays at the end of the 18th century and were normally connected to Romeo and Juliet type circumstances. The story in the play involves a merchant from Kyoto named Denbei, who falls in love with a courtesan named Oshun from the Gion district. On an ill-fated evening, Denbei kills his evil rival, a samurai named Kanzaemon, and must escape from the law. The family of Oshun tries to intervene to protect her and prevent what they suspect will be an attempt to take her own life. Denbei and Oshun escape at night and kill themselves on the road. The depiction by Toyokuni is the typical kabuki mie, or frozen moment on stage that's meant to give the audience time to contemplate the emotions of the actors. The colors of this print are faded, but would originally have been brilliant orange, yellow, and purple. Toyokuni's most famous student was Utagawa Kunisada, who during his lifetime was the most prominent ukiyo-e print designer. Kunisada, born near Edo in 1786, was the son of a merchant who operated a ferry. At the age of 15, he became a student of Toyokuni, and by 1807 had illustrated his first book. The following year, he produced the first of his kabuki actor prints. This image comes from 1820 and depicts Ichikawa Danjuro VII as Urashima Taro. The story is from a Japanese folk tale in which the fisherman Urashima Taro saves a turtle from some children who are torturing it. He's then visited by a giant turtle that tells him he saved the daughter of the Emperor of the Sea. Taro is brought to the undersea palace of the dragon god, where he receives thanks and gifts. He becomes homesick and is allowed to go home after 3 days, but finds that 3 days under the sea are equal to 300 years on land. One of the gifts that he had received from the princess was a box that he was told not to open. When he realizes that everyone he knew once had been dead for hundreds of years, he absent-mindedly opens the box and discovers that it contained his age, which slips out like smoke. He immediately becomes ancient and infirm. From the sea, he hears the sad voice of the princess reminding him that he wasn't supposed to open the box. Kunisada made many bijinga prints. This one from the 1840s is done as a vertical diptych that measures 61 centimeters high. This is the upper half of it. It represents the oiran, or high-ranking courtesan, Komurasaki, or Little Purple, who is the subject of a love story in popular plays. The story tells that Komurasaki is being held by kidnappers in a den of thieves when Gompachi enters, mistakenly thinking that he's entering an inn. When Komurasaki warns him of the danger, he draws his sword, defeats the kidnappers, and escapes with Komurasaki and brings her to her parents. Later, Komurasaki's family falls into debt, and she must sell herself into prostitution in the Yoshiwara. Gompachi meets her there by chance and vows to release her from her obligation. He has no money, so he must take to robbery and is eventually caught and executed. A few days later, Komurasaki escapes from Yoshiwara and commits suicide on his grave. Kunisada produced many ukiyo-e images, and also, prior to the Tenpo reforms of 1842, probably made a number of shunga prints as well. In 1844, Kunisada decided to change his name to Toyokuni, after his teacher, who had died in 1825. A number of his prints from that time are signed Kunisada, changing to Toyokuni II. Today, Kunisada is sometimes called Toyokuni III because another, lesser-known print designer named Toyoshige had already claimed the name Toyokuni II. Throughout his career, Kunisada produced many images of kabuki actors. This is one from 1858. It's one of the most striking. It depicts Ichikawa Ichizo III as Rokusaburo the carpenter, a hero of a popular play who is in this scene wrestling with a giant fish. The print was made as an announcement for a performance at the Morita Theater in Edo in July of 1858. Another of Toyokuni's best-known students, an arrival of Kunisada, was Utagawa Kuniyoshi, who established his reputation with a series of images of 108 heroes from the Chinese novel Shui Hu Juan. In this print triptych, Kuniyoshi has depicted heroes in a boat on a tempestuous sea, in which a huge sea monster is thrashing about as tengu, or demons, fly across the waves like ghosts. Each panel measures 10 by 14 inches. This is Kuniyoshi's best-known woodblock print triptych, done around 1845. It depicts the princess Takayasha summoning a skeleton specter in order to frighten Mitsukuni. The story, a 10th century legend, was described in a kabuki play called The Palace of Soma that was performed in 1844. It relates the rebellion of the provincial warlord Taira no Masakado, whose daughter was the princess Takayasha. Masakado attempted to create an eastern court in Shimoso province to compete with the emperor in Kyoto, but he failed and was killed in 940. The princess, however, continued to live in the ruins of the palace of Soma. Legend tells that a samurai named Oya no Mitsukuni heard stories about a ghost inhabiting the Soma palace and so went to investigate. In this scene, the princess is shown reading a spell from a scroll and causing a giant skeleton specter to appear and threaten Mitsukuni and his servant. Although skeletons have been depicted in Japanese images since the 12th century, this one is so unusual in its accuracy that it's thought to have been inspired by an example from Kuniyoshi's collection of European prints. Although the scene was part of a kabuki play, Kuniyoshi presented it as a historical image, because by that time the Tenpo reforms had made it illegal to depict kabuki actors in woodblock prints. Kuniyoshi clearly had a sense of humor, which he expressed in an untitled series of prints in the 1840s. In these images, which look like portraits, the heads are composed of the naked bodies of smaller men and women. This print is titled, A Young Person Who Looks Old. On it, there's an inscription that reads, I am truly grateful that various people have come together to construct my face. Because of everyone, I now have a wonderful face. The reference is most likely to the fact that a print such as this was a collaboration between the designer, the woodblock carver, the printer, and the publisher. This print by Kuniyoshi was commissioned in 1849 as a tribute to the actor Ichikawa Danjuro VIII on the part of two clubs of amateur haiku poets, the Shimba and the Uogashi. Danjuro VIII, who was a 27-year-old kabuki star, left the theater to travel to Osaka to visit his actor father, who had been banished from Edo during the Tenpo reforms. Kuniyoshi chose this particular imagery because Danjuro VIII departed in May, and on May 5th, Boys' Day in Japan, it was the custom to fly a large paper carp banner for each boy in the household. Girls' Day is March 3rd, when dolls wearing kimonos are displayed in the home. The carp is a symbol of strength and determination because it can swim upstream, so it represents the ability to overcome difficulties in life. Kuniyoshi probably intended the fish in this image to represent Danjuro VIII, since the banner in front of it depicts Shoki, the conjurer of demons, with the face of his father, Danjuro VII. Danjuro VII used the actor's symbol of a lobster, and one of the poets who commissioned the print, Taiwa, wrote in one of the included poems, Nihonbashi, waiting for the lobster boat to come into port. The Poets' Societies were centered in the Nihonbashi fishmongers district, so this expressed the wish that Danjuro VII would be pardoned. The following year that in fact occurred, and Danjuro VIII returned to the stage in Edo.